Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective, here with Jonathan Tran, our Longhorns post-game recap. Very somber day as we take a L to start the season, not 1-0, but 0-1 to the Maryland Terrapins. Immediately, John, what hits my mind is deja vu. I'm sure it's the case across Longhorns fans everywhere. It's exhausting. The weather delay, 6 hours. We've been at this now. Just your immediate thoughts, emotions, feelings, coming off another disappointing loss to Maryland.
The thing that I was worried about was we definitely didn't show up to play right away. We weren't ready to play. A lot of blown coverages, a lot of mix-ups between the defensive backs. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even just the youthful players. I think there was one where Devontae Davis ran into P.J. Locke, and that was one for a post for a touchdown. Right. I don't know how many yards it was, but just things like that. I mean, the first half, or I'd say the first maybe 20 minutes of the half, it was very frustrating to see that over and over again.
There were some things I found alarming in that first 20 minutes. We didn't seem physical at the point of attack. We seemed to have issues with speed, getting beat to the edge. Offensively, we couldn't really get anything going. We were down, 24-7 outside of the Devin Duvernay touchdown, which was an amazing effort on his part to get to the football. But down 24-7, you take away that play, we had like 10 yards total at that point. And like you said, just a really poor start. I mean, we open up the game, and there's been so much criticism all season long about Tim Beck and his offense, about Tom Herman, whose offense is it. And I thought just a microcosm of that was the delay of game penalty on your very first snap of the season.
Yeah, that just shows that your lack of focus right away. I mean, it does. And I believe that they got the ball right away and they drove it down right away. And did they score on the first possession?
Maryland did. Maryland did. Yeah.
And I think that was one of my things that I was worried about was the defense. And yes, I know they're missing Anthony Wheeler in the first half of that. So you're missing 2/3 of your linebacker, 1/3 of your linebacker crew, and then Gary Johnson goes against that targeting penalty. Then
so let's talk about that, right? Like Gary Johnson obviously goes out with the targeting penalty on Kasim Hill sliding. It just and before that, honestly, he wasn't having the best game we've seen him play, and I think how he was playing was kind of indicative of how the whole team was playing. I felt like guys were energized and wanting to fly around, but it was misguided energy, like a nervousness type thing, Like last year, I felt like we straight overlooked Maryland. Like that, I got that vibe. I didn't get that. I felt like they weren't prepared in some sense, and it was like a lot of thinking and guessing, but they were just excited, and I just can't put my finger on now 2 openers in a row where they've had this issue with this particular football team. And we cited in our preview video how much motion and pre-snap stuff Maryland does. It's very, very tricky. It's very confusing. We don't see it a lot in the Big 12, especially with the quarterback under center. And honestly, they're hiding and moving the ball a lot. You saw how they dissected us with jet sweeps over and over again until the point where their offensive coordinator basically challenged our defense at the end of the game to stop. And to the defense's credit,
they ran it 3 times in a row.
They ran it 3 times in a row.
And we don't think you'll stop it 3 times in a row, essentially. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort
people
of
start installing that.
Yeah,
absolutely,
just against us on that. And
I know I would.
I think towards the end of the game we were playing it very well. We were keeping containment on them, and we were actually breaking off our blocks and making tackles. But earlier in the game, no, it didn't work. And then we were over anticipating the play too, and they were still getting yardage on it. Then they even beat us with another wrinkle where they actually did a pass off of that for a touchdown as well. So I mean,
the young man, I think his name was Juwan Jones or Jashawn Jones, freshman, who had a rushing touchdown, receiving touchdown, and a passing touchdown, which is a remarkable effort on that young man's part. But Going back to lack of discipline, we had lack of discipline in technique. Mm-hmm. We had lack of discipline in terms of understanding the coverage, and we had lack of discipline after the snap. Whether it's a Minihue, where he drove the quarterback into the ground
on a third and 14, I think it was.
On a third and 14, just plays that cripple you. B.J. Foster had one. I know he's a young guy, his first college game, but he has a really bad one where he gets the quarterback in the face. Jared Wilbon had a hands to the face penalty.
Just little hiccups by our leadership teams.
Chris Boyd
had a dropped interception. The next play, they had a touchdown. Chris Boyd had a pretty bad pass interference call. Mm-hmm. And he blew coverage one time where he over anticipated an out, and they went an out and go on him, a sluggo, and then he got burnt on that one too. That's our senior leadership that we're leading.
I think it goes to a bigger thing, man. I think just program-wise, they don't know how to win. They don't know how to play with expectations. And when you look at somebody like a Chris Boyd, all they know is losing. Yes, they went 7-6 last year and got to a bowl, but for the most part, all they know is disappointment. All they know is we're trying to rebuild Texas. We're trying to do this. You watch some of these other teams today, because one of the things we had an opportunity to do is we had an opportunity to watch a lot of football because we had so much downtime. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the elite teams, there's a certain confidence, a certain expectation that you're seeing these guys fly around with. You look at the Oklahoma game earlier today, guys catching the ball in space and just explosive playmaking across the board. There didn't seem to be that struggle to execute. Right now at Texas, we struggle to consistently execute. Whether it's basic things like bubble screen. You see one where we throw it out to the side and Colin Johnson, for whatever reason, just doesn't block his man. Now, I'm not going to get on him too hard because, unfortunately, he wasn't targeted for the first 20 minutes of the game.
It was very effective.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very effective.
And he's still, obviously, one of the best players in the country at high point of football, making a play in the air at 6'6". L.J. Humphrey had a pretty good day outside of the drop he had at the beginning of the second half. So our wide receivers, when they had an opportunity to get the football, I thought they played pretty well. I thought they played well, all things considered. And let's be honest with you, Sam struggled today a little bit. Whenever you're leading the offense, I think he was having an okay day until we came back from that weather delay, and we finished.
He was what? I think I saw 12 for 22 and 192.
Mm-hmm. And 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we finished with 3 turnovers to end the game, which is tough, especially when you're in a one-possession football game. The Trey Watson fumble was tough. That's going to be a very controversial play because, it seemed like there may have been inconclusive evidence for the referee not to overturn it, but the ball clearly did pop out.
Yeah, it was a fumble. It was a fumble, but it did look like he gained possession back, but you can't really tell. And I understand. I understand why they overturned it, and I'm not going to argue that.
Even that play, right? Like we got the first down on it, but it's a struggle. When we make a play, we have to break tackles and do all this. No one's just, the Duvernay play was the one play where somebody actually was on play design, running free down the field. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it speaks to what is our identity as an offense in this program, because Tom Herman was hired as an highly regarded offensive mind, a quarterback whisperer. And we have not seen that development with the quarterbacks yet. We haven't seen that development with the offense. And I don't know what that could be attributed to. But we're headed down a dark path potentially, because if you look at what happened with Charlie Strong in the defense and what happened with Vance Bedford and how all of a sudden he stopped coming to press conferences and then he got let go and then it really was Charlie. And I know that was in year 3, but I see so many similarities with Tom Herman and Tim Beck, and I just don't see the identity. Like even the drive that we had where we were down 24-7 and we ran a lot of inside zone with Trey Watson and Keontae Ingram. They were running hard, actually pushed us into the end zone. Mm-hmm. They go to the sideline, they're fired up, they're yelling at guys like, hey, we're still in this, it's only 20, we're only down 2 possessions. Do we see Keontae Ingram the rest of the game? Did we go I mean,
I think we did towards the end of the first half. I think, but the second half, I don't know. I think they were trying.
they went to Daniel Young.
Yeah, and Trey Watson as well. And I also saw Kyle Porter in there for, I guess, possession, receiving
and pass
yards.
blocking.
Yeah.
But what's their identity? What do they like? What can they hang their hat on that they do well? Like you go back to 2016. For all we say about Sterling Gilbert, we knew we could run inside zone, we could run trap, we could run our power with the 18-wheeler. No matter who was back there, even Chris Warren before he got hurt, we knew even in 3rd and 4 we could run it, and confidently. There's nothing that we can hang our hat. Maybe quarterback power, but we're trying to avoid that because the quarterback has concussion issues. So we only run that play when
I think that we were calling that out. We're like slide.
Yeah, and he's diving head first. Yeah. So it's just like, oh my goodness. Like today, guys, I'm looking at the stats right now. 36 carries for 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, less than 4 yards per carry, which is actually better than what we were doing last season. So I will give them some credit there. And again, the offensive line wasn't bad. I don't think they were bad. So again, that's why I say
I thought the offensive line was actually pretty good. I thought they held up. They held up the pocket.
I like what I saw from Calvin Anderson.
Yeah. I don't think he let any pressure come from the left side.
He had a clean pocket. Sam had a pretty relatively, even when Maryland brought some pressure. It's funny though because again, this game, I want to hear the coaches take responsibility for this game. I'll be honest with you, man. Todd Orlando for the second year in a row struggled against this Maryland scheme. He brought pressure when he didn't necessarily need to. He brought pressure from the wrong angle sometimes, and Maryland had their stuff schemed up to counter. And it put some guys in some really, really tough positions to make plays. I know Todd Orlando is going to be schemed up well against Big 12 spread offense. That's his forte. But when you're playing these out-of-conference games, like we're watching Washington, Auburn, you're going to face opponents that don't necessarily do all the things that you guys typically do in your area of the region, and you have to be ready for that. And we weren't, quite frankly. They did get some things buttoned up in the second half. You have to give them credit for that. They did get the end of the game stuff buttoned up on defense. But as the defense got stronger, it's just one hand. We're not synced up. I will have to say,
I also wasn't liking how we weren't getting any push from our defensive line.
You noted that a lot. So can you talk about that defensive line, just our pass rush in general?
So up the middle, and honestly, yeah, Breckenhager has done a great job in conference play. He looked small out there.
Yeah,
he looked like he couldn't budge anyone. I mean, he could beat every once in a while. He beat someone with his speed on them, but he doesn't look like a defensive end to me. But I think the coaches
I think
trust
he's more
him.
of a 3-4 outside.
Yeah, I think the coaches trust him, and I think they know that he'll do whatever he can to make a play, and he's gonna fight through the whole play. He's one of those guys who has the motor, and you don't have to tell him, hey, go finish the play type of thing.
Sure.
But
when you're playing a disciplined team like Maryland,
and it's
they
not
can
a team
exploit
that
those
you can just lean on them with your athleticism when you have a team that's a Power 5 conference and actually, like you said, picked up a whole bunch of good transfers. You're gonna have a pretty strong team, and you're gonna have a tough time beating them with your athleticism, type of thing. And that's what I was hinting at when we did our preview, that I was worried in that regard because Poona Ford was the guy who took on 2 people and it let people play off of that.
Yeah.
I think Todd Orlando did a really good job at adjustments in the second half. I just think it was just a little too late, type of thing.
Yeah. And look, there was some positives. Brandon Jones to me was probably
phenomenal.
the MVP. Yeah, I thought he put forth a Herculean effort. I felt good about even potentially winning the game on that last drive after that punt return. He bailed us. He made plays. He looked like a playmaker, and that's another thing you notice when you're watching these games today. The guy's just making plays. Even if you're supposed to fair catch it, you know what? Throw caution to the wind. Fortune favors the bold, and I'm gonna go out here and do something creative because I'm gifted. I'm a 5-star athlete, and that's what we do. We don't have enough of that right now. We're not seeing that enough. I felt like they tried to force feed the ball to Deshaun Jameson. That was a guy that I was really excited to see, and somebody that I was listed as a most watched. But one of the things that you have to take away in terms of my point about lack of identity with the offense is they're trying. You can almost tell when they're going to give him the ball and how they're going to give him the ball. It's not organically, schemed into
Not
their
like
offense.
they ever used him as a decoy. It's when he was in the game and you knew they were going to use him type of thing. Yeah,
They're showing their hand every single time. And Maryland's keying on that. I would if I was the defensive coordinator, right? So they have a lot of stuff to get buttoned up offensively. They're going to have to, again, one of my personal things is I think they rotate too many receivers. I see so many different faces in there. I think sometimes it's kind of hard to establish a rapport with guys.
I think they'll start locking that up around like week 3, week 4. I think they're still trying to get them in shape, in game shape. Everyone caught up because even towards the end you started seeing guys cramp, especially in that heat with the humidity going on. So I'm sure that was that, and wanted to kind of see how these kids reacted within game situations, because we saw quite a few freshmen out there. You saw the Josh Moore, you saw your James guy.
Yeah, and they got and look, freshmen across the country, just with the rules being what they are, where they can play 4 games. You're going to see freshmen all over. Every team's going to, no one's going to hesitate to put somebody out there. You'll start to see it at the end of the season as well when injuries come into play. It really expands coaches' depth chart. So we'll see guys platooned in I'm sure at some point we'll see Anthony Cook as well, and Jalen Green, some of these other guys as well. So the last thing I want to discuss just before we wrap up here, because it's really tough, is what's the perception of Tom Herman after today? From a local standpoint, I mean, obviously we shouldn't have been ranked number 23 coming into the season like we were last year, and that whole thing. But what's the narrative? I mean, he's been driving the 1-0 platform now, 2nd year in a row. We start off 0-1. Just your thoughts on that.
I don't think he's a bad coach by any means. I don't think and I'm not going to say that. I actually think he's a pretty.
So you're not joining the people with the pitchforks on Twitter?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I can't really also say we got to give him time. No, the infrastructure's there. The infrastructure's better than when Charlie Strong was here, and we didn't really give him the 4 years it takes for your class to actually become leaders type of thing.
Mm-hmm. All his captains are Charlie Strong guys.
I think that we started fighting a little too late, and like you said, we're not meshing just yet, because when we'd actually score,
that's a good point. Yeah,
our defense would kind of let up, and we wouldn't have someone that could step up and get a 3 and out.
When we go up 29-24, they
drive right down.
They drive right down.
They drive right down. It's like you think that we have all the momentum going, and then they just have I actually think that was the time that Boyd had the pass interference. I mean, they shot themselves in the leg on that possession. However, it was pass interference, I
just think Longhorn fans have seen so much of the same over the last however many years, and today was just an example of every single thing we've seen. Like, I can go back, I can put up a tape of when we played UCLA in Arlington. I don't know if anybody remembers that game. About 3 years ago. I think it was 2015 or 2014. I think it was 2014 because when Swoops first took over after the BYU game. And we go up, and then as we go up, they return a punt, and we get beat by Jerry Neuheisel after Brett Hundley goes out. Just people are missing and horrible assignments, worst case scenario, we screw up the coin flip. I just feel like these things, it's now, at first we chalked it up to the end of the Mac Brown thing, and the program was what it was because it was stale. Then we say, oh, well, Charlie wasn't, for whatever reason, wasn't the right fit. We moved on. And now, and these things are creeping over into the phases of the program. And I think as Longhorn fans, I know I am. I'm just why. Because I feel like we are Tennessee. There's no more, Texas might turn into Tennessee or anything like that. That's just the reality of the situation. You are what your record is. We've become that once former giant that's now a mediocre Power 5 team. How do you get out of that? Hopefully, and win.
You win. You just
you have to win.
Every single week. So it starts with Tulsa. I mean, we can't overlook Tulsa because you definitely do not starting the hardest part of our schedule. Right.
Yeah, because you have
Tulsa,
that 4-game.
You definitely do not want to go down 0-2 because then the people with the pitchforks on Twitter might be right, and you might be hearing that he wasn't the right person. Let's start looking somewhere else for him.
Right.
But the next goal is to get 1-1. The next goal after that is to beat USC. That's a big marquee game that we'll have. We beat USC. We then have to move on to what? TCU.
TCU, right after Kansas State, Oklahoma. Like
it's a rough. But I mean, we have to get better.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the errors that we did have, it can be fine tuned. So I mean, for instance, our special teams punting. I mean, he shanked quite a few. Gave them good field position.
He had an up and down game, but it's his first college.
I know it's his first, but I'm saying it's fine tuning things. I mean, he was hitting stuff off the right side of his foot, and I mean that's all.
One thing I forgot to mention. I know we said we were going to close with the perception thing. I feel like everybody this week is going to be talking about the 2-point conversion. Mm-hmm. After we, after the safety, we go and get the touchdown. I think it was to Colin Johnson.
I like the call. I don't like the play.
I agree.
I think you had the momentum on your side, and
you wanted to kind of prove to your guys. You wanted going into halftime.
We played the worst half we could play, and we could be tied at this point. But the play just did not.
But I know the binder people are gonna say, "Don't chase points," blah 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 until the fourth quarter, and Tom Herman, the infamous binder quote. So we're gonna have, but I agree with John. I think you go out there and you sometimes as a coach you have to try to make a statement to your guys, and not every time that's gonna work out.
As a Cowboys fan, the Cowboys, I've seen the last couple of years, they usually run either one or two plays. It's either Dak is in the shotgun.
And they do like a zone read fake, and they've thrown it to Witten, or they throw a slant.
Yeah, that one, or the one that's worked 3 out of 3 times that I've seen is where they line up the same exact way everyone thinks it's going to happen. Instead of he squares his shoulders like he's going to throw, and then he takes off running right up the gut. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think on that same drive, Ellinger did the same thing. I think that probably would have worked better than having 2 guys run to the...
They try to do the rub thing, and we've never been able to execute a rub route correctly. I know Clemson did it to win the national championship, but they just better coached at it. They executed. We've never been able to do it. Remember last year we were trying to do rubs, and we kept getting called for offensive pass interference. Mm-hmm. So we tried to go back, and then I've never been a fan of the short side rollout to cuts off half the field. I know people will say, well, Sam Ehlinger, did it against USC and threw it back to Cade Brewer. But, the percentages of that play, when you call it the way it is, I do like your idea of either a quarterback draw, spreading them out, and having another play just to... So, you guys let us know in the comments what you think. We'll be back for the Tulsa game. One of the things, win, lose, or draw, we're going to be here with our reactions. We're not one of those fans that tucks and hides and you can't hit them up or see them for days. Yeah. We will always answer for our teams. So...
Right. It's going to be a rough 6 days, but, Tulsa's next. I mean, you can't be a fair weather fan. You got to follow them. We got beat today.
Yeah. Congrats to the Maryland Terrapins, especially all things considered. Matt Canada stepping up. My hat's off to you guys. All right. Hook 'em.